The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities aims at ensuring the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedom by all persons with disabilities. Nigeria has ratified this convention and has over the years made efforts towards achieving this goal through legislation and support systems in all strata of development. Key among measures taken so far is the enactment of the 2018 Disability Law prohibiting the discrimination of persons with disabilities and the establishment of the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities to coordinate strategic plans to drive home better life for the disability community in Nigeria. The Commission has been collaborating with key players, including the World Bank, in this direction. But is the country on the right track? My guest will speak to some of the strategic development plans on the spot. I am Joseph Wotsem. Welcome to the program. Now, my guest is a disability inclusion and development practitioner with over 15 years experience. Since 2022, he has been a World Bank consultant on policy and disability inclusion attached to the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. He is the founder and CEO of Inclusion Development Consult and Human and Organizational Resources Development Center, respectively. He is currently consulting for many international and national organizations where he is contributing to development and implementation of legal and policy frameworks on disability rights and inclusion in sectors like education, health, social protection, financial inclusion, inclusive public procurement, telecommunications, public transport, public infrastructure, and the electoral process, and most recently, the development of disability disaggregated data in line with the Washington Group question sets between 2012 and 2022. My guest is a scholar in the Institute of Development Studies, University of Sussex, United Kingdom, an alumni of the U.S. International Professional Exchange Program and of Mobility International, USA, with degrees in political science, education, and human resources management. On the spot is the World Bank Technical Assistant to the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, Dr. Adebukola Adebayo. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay. You are providing technical assistance to the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. This is a commission that OC doesn't have a huge budget and is relying heavily on collaboration and support to take care of some of its mandate. As a World Bank person in that commission, what role is the World Bank playing in assisting the commission to meet up with his mandate?
Okay, thank you very much again, and happy to be here. Let's start by appreciating the leadership of the Commission under the able leader, the Executive Secretary, David Lalu, who has reached out to partners, to development partners across the country, who has shared his vision with them, and through which they have come to support him to achieve the mandate of the Commission. Because without his reaching out, without his own vision, those in the World Bank and other development partners would not know where to come in. So he has set a vision, and it is that vision that the partners are keen into. That said, I think what the World Bank specifically came to do with the Commission is to strengthen its governance and institutional structures, because the law is a piece of document. It doesn't give so much details. It's an omnibus document that just gives an idea, direction of where we want to go with regards to disability rights and inclusion. But with the support of the World Bank and other partners, the Commission under James Lalu has been able to expand its governance structure, developed operational policies, and these are what we have done in the last 2-3 years when the Commission was created. The law needs to be unpacked into operational policies, frameworks, standard operating procedures, and regulations in accordance with the various provisions or sections of the law. And so when the new agency is created like that, you need to be able to interpret the law, unpack it into modules, into manuals, into different smaller documents, which they will now use to implement the provisions of the act. This is one major aspect that the James Lalu-led Commission has really focused on, and that's what the World Bank and other partners came to do, has been doing with the Commission in the last 2-3 years.
Okay, you're talking about breaking it down. The Commission itself, I'm sure you have recognized that, and then now the Executive Secretary recently launched what they call the implementation of the 5-year strategic development plan. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Absolutely.
So what is this 5-year strategic development plan all about? And what will you, as the World Bank representative there, what would you be expecting from that plan?
The way it works is that when the Executive Secretary was appointed, like I said, he was only given a copy of the act. And of course, as a leader, you are expected to now, hit the ground running, bring your experience to bear on how you want to implement the act. And so the first step that the leadership of the Commission took under James Lalu was to develop a 5-year strategic plan. That plan was ready by 2022 April, and is to run from 2022 to 2027. Now the plan is currently serving as the compass through which the Commission designs, set up, plan, implement, monitors and evaluate all its programs, its operations, its services. That plan has about 10 strategic objectives, cutting across issues of operations, issues of policy development, issues of providing services, issues of cross-cutting issues like gender and children, issues of partnership building, and so on and so forth. So all of these 10 strategic objectives of the plan is what the Commission is implementing through its annual budgets. So one aspect of that strategy, of the strategic objectives, has to do with policy development, the operational policies with which the Commission will implement its programs. So what the World Bank has done between 2022 and now is to help the Commission develop those operational policies. And as we speak, up to 13 operational policies have been developed. Actually, the plan prescribes that there should be about 40 of them. Okay, and that's a huge number. It tells you how vast the strategic plan is. About 40 policy items are to be developed. But so far so good, because of the painstaking process it has to go through. We all know what it takes to develop even one policy in a government agency.
Okay.
But I don't know how the ES has done it, but with the support of the World Bank, we've been able to develop 13
Okay.
of those policies, so far so good.
Okay. Definitely everything has to go in line with the United Nations Conventions on Persons with Disabilities.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
when you take a look at what they have, I don't want to say a lot of things are in a rush,
Yeah.
or are rushly put in there. Is this in line with the convention?
Absolutely. The Disability Act itself was designed in line with the provisions in the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. In fact, we've done a visual to show how our Disability Act in Nigeria aligns with provisions of the UNCRPD. And so, if you look at the various provisions of the Act, it talks about access to infrastructure, it talks about access to health, it talks about access to education, access to social protection, access to rehabilitation, access to employment and economic opportunities, right to participate in political and public affairs, and so on. There are so many. The first 30 to 33 sections of the UNCRPD are aptly captured in the provisions of the Disability Act as well. So now that we don't have the Act and the Commission in place, it is for the Commission to now begin to implement all of these provisions that I highlighted, from access to education, to health, to social protection, to public transportation, to public buildings, and so many other rights as enshrined in the Act. So that's what the Commission is set out to implement. But the Commission will then now need to put in place operational policies and guidelines and regulations in place to be able to achieve this. I'm sure as we discuss, I'll be able to speak to specifics of which of these 13 operational documents we have developed, what they address.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I read you're one of these persons that celebrated the autonomy of the local government, the judgment that just came of recent.
Exactly.
You if I'm correct, you said you want the local government to go ahead and allocate 10 to 15% of their budget on issues of persons with disabilities. Is not be demanding too much from the local government?
No, at all. In fact, that's even very little. What informed that is that presently the James Lalu-led Disability Commission is working with some partners to develop. They've developed what we call local government disability framework. It's one of the frameworks that the documents that the Commission has developed. Before now, there was no role. There hasn't been any role that local governments play in managing the affairs of people with disabilities. And most times, the reason is that, disability is very expensive endeavor, their equipment and all of those things are beyond the reach of local government budget. So now that the Commission under James Lalu has developed a disability framework, and to add to that, the Supreme Court has now issued a judgment to say, look, local government have direct access to your funds. It means they have access to more money now, more resources. So the excuse that, we don't have the budget to cover disability because the funds available to local government are very little, that is now history. And that's why we put it out there that we expect that local government should be able to commit 10 to 15% of their budgets to covering persons with disabilities, because according to the UN, 10 to 15% of every population are made up of people with disabilities. So whether at the local, at the state, at the federal, and at the global level. So and that's why we are saying if we are 10 to 15% of the population, committing 10 to 15% of your budget to that section of the population, I don't think it's too much.
Okay, we'll take a break now, but when we come back, I will now ask you the other way. I know why I asked you that first.
Okay.
So that we'll know whether the 15% you're asking is not too little for that.
Okay.
Okay.
NTA News 24 has the sole mandate of bringing news to you anywhere and everywhere.
We set standards based on current broadcast realities while consolidating on a wider reach to variety of audiences.
We go beyond the screaming headlines to verify, interrogate, and accommodate all shades of opinion without prejudice to national interest.
Welcome back to On the Spot with World Bank Technical Assistant to the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, Dr. Adebukola Adebayo.
Thank you.
Okay, before we went on the break, we were talking, I deliberately asked you that question, whether it's going to be too much. Now, when you look at what let me say that there has been a huge neglect in the past in terms of inclusivity regarding persons with disabilities. You know, even the Act itself, you had to make a lot of amendments by that's 2018.
Yeah.
And then the commission also came up.
Yeah.
When you are asking of it, there's huge gap. You talk about infrastructures, you are talking about assistive devices in terms of participation in politics and political processes and so on. Given all this, let me ask you the other way around. Is that 10 to 15% not too little for these persons, given that the long years of neglect?
Yeah, we have to start from somewhere, and we can't possibly ask for the entire budget. There is a strategy to this. When we say commit certain percentage of your budget to persons with disability, it doesn't mean that it is just that. For example, we expect that there are specific needs of persons with disabilities, in every society. We expect the government to look into that. But there are also provisions. When you make provisions for everybody, you also mainstream people with disabilities into those provisions. For example, when you are building roads, you don't build a separate road for people with disabilities. You don't build a separate school or a separate hospital for them. You only make sure that they are able to access those facilities. And that is why the first step that the National Commission under Dr. James Lalu, the first step they took after creating that 5-year strategic plan was to develop what you call an accessibility standard or an accessibility regulation that prescribes how public buildings or any form of building or infrastructure, be it road or bridge or hospitals, schools, and all of that, stadium, recreational centers, and so on. There are standards they should meet when in terms of creating physical access for people with disabilities, whether those on wheelchair and those who are blind and all of that. So that was the first document among the 13 documents I mentioned earlier that the National Commission has developed. So they now have a national accessibility regulation. In fact, that regulation has been endorsed by the Federal Executive Council. So that in Nigeria now we have the measurements, the correct measurements of how a ramp should look like, how a building should be able to accommodate people with different disabilities. That has been developed and is being implemented by the National Disability commission as we speak. So when we are now saying that local governments should say, oh, 15%, we expect that when they are building roads, when they are building markets, all of the infrastructures that fall under their purview, they should make use of this accessibility regulation that the National Disability Commission has developed. The same thing with other functions that fall within the purview of the local government. If you look at Schedule 4 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, you will see all the list of functions that the Constitution has prescribed for local governments, including primary health care, basic education, building of trunk C roads, and so on and so forth, building of markets, and so on. So you see that the local governments are expected to mainstream disability into all of these functions.
Okay. We are pressed for time, so we will not have much time today, but I want you to give us an insight on this. The last general elections in the country, there was a huge call for assistive devices for persons with disabilities. I know the World Bank, the United World Bank, assisted the government in terms of preparation for that particular elections. Give me just a few, maybe a minute or two. Just tell us how you look at this. What role do you want the World Bank playing now to improve on that? Because there was a huge cry.
The way the World Bank works is we don't just go into everywhere. It is where the government of the country wants the bank to support. That is where they put in their resources. As far as disability inclusion is concerned, the World Bank has so many projects in education, in health, and so on, and they are supporting, ensuring that disability inclusion is mainstreamed in all the projects that they are supporting. But as per election, I think that we have come of age, and the National Electoral Commission, Independent Electoral Commission, has developed a policy on disability inclusion in the electoral process, and they are implementing that policy, gradually. So we have left where we used to be some 10, 20 years back, when people with disabilities were not having any access at all. Right now we're having some access. We're only asking that they expand the space. But I know that if the Nigerian government requests the World Bank to come and assist it in developing,
they'll come in.
They may be able to come in.
Okay, thank you so much, World Bank Technical Assistant to the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, Dr. Adebukola Adebayo, for being on the spot.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's okay. Thank you to viewer for always being there. I'll see you on the next episode. I'm Joseph Woodson. Bye-bye.